Hello, everybody, and welcome to CFB Unfiltered. I am Blayne Gilmer, joined by Donovan White and Josh Taylor, my two co-hosts here on the show on the Believe Podcast Network that touches on all things college football related. We've got headlines, we've got playoffs, Heisman talk, and the big three at the end, but we're going to try to help you out on a little bit of wagering if you'd like to do so. All of those good things, but a little show announcement here. We wanted to announce, obviously, we're premiering here on the 365 Sports YouTube channel here on this Friday and on the Believe Podcast Network on Friday morning. So no longer will we be going live, but we're going to be doing two shows each week. We're going to have something for you coming out on Friday where we preview the week ahead. This week we have a game in, Iowa and Maryland's actually on Friday night. So we got a little Friday night football. So we'll be touching on all of the games throughout the weekend, the marquee matchups. And then on Mondays, we'll be dropping a reaction episode, what went down and why, all of the hot takes that you could want. But Josh, speaking of headlines, man, there's some teams that are out there that are making headlines and not necessarily for all the right reasons either.
Yeah, Clemson barely hanging on to the top 25. Kind of surprised they're still there with two losses. Dabo Swinney, his seat might be getting a little high. The fans aren't too happy there. I kind of want to talk about that real quick because I texted y'all today, said I just want a couple minutes just to talk about Dabo Swinney. And I thought about something. Outside of three guys who have been generational talent guys with Hopkins, Deshaun Watson, and Trevor Lawrence, what other players has Dabo Swinney really come out of Clemson that have really thrived in the NFL? Like, can you name one off the top of your head besides those three guys?
Hunter Renfrow.
I mean, he's a slot guy who scored in the national championship game off a pick. But outside of that, you have Isaiah Simmons.
Gruden is using him to full capacity over there, man.
I mean, yes, but I can name last class of Alabama. They had more in the last year or two than Clemson had. So my point is Dabo Swinney is going into living rooms, sitting down with parents and saying, hey man, come to Clemson. South Carolina's gorgeous. It's not, you're going to win national championships. You're going to go to the NFL. I'm going to, get you going to where you need to go. And it's not happening. He's more worried about players getting paid, saying he's going to quit as soon as that happens. And players taking some of his money, I guess, but he's not developing guys, and he doesn't have that player this year who's going to bail him out. That's that once in a lifetime player like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. You have DJ. Yeah, he's a great quarterback, but what are you doing with him in your schemes? And it looks like nothing. Nothing these first few weeks have changed for him there. So Dabo, I'm looking at you. I'm saying what are you going to do about this, and who's really going to step up? I don't see anyone really. Like I said, DJ, he's struggling out there. He doesn't know what to do with all of his new weapons. So I'm a little bit concerned. I don't mind being an Alabama fan, but still, last game against NC State, 111 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That is not Clemson numbers. You're not going to win championships like that.
And Donovan, I was going to throw to you on that in terms of Clemson's offense. One thing you could always bet on with Clemson was being able to be very sound up front. The offensive line, guys like Mitch Hyatt there over the past were just anchors on that offense. And I'm going to get your perspective on that, on Clemson's O-line, after I talk about BetOnline right here. Speaking of being able to bet on things, guys, we are thankful for BetOnline for sponsoring the CFB Unfiltered podcast. It's back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all pro and college football action with a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on top of your first deposit. Don't forget to use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your bonus. From football, basketball to boxing. Guys, all the action, your Vegas casino games that you like to play, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers on this 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. But Donovan, like I said, you could always bet on that Clemson offensive line getting the job done. Not the case here in 2021.
Yeah, you saw guys like Jackson Carman leave. Obviously, not doing much for the Cincinnati Bengals right now, but that doesn't take away what he did in college, right? They had guys up front, and honestly, I don't think that the players there at Clemson up front are bad football players, right? I've watched these guys on film before in the past few years. They're fundamentally sound. They really are. They're just not getting put in a great position, right? You take out the bad quarterback play, right? That can be from multiple reasons, whether it's a scheme or just DJ's not a good quarterback, right? There's a couple of reasons, but you're not getting put in good positions to succeed, right? You're not having the right schemes. You're not utilizing the players around you. So it's a multitude of things. They're not elite, right? They're not great like they have been. And when they're struggling, right, and you're not putting them in great positions, the whole team's going to struggle, as evident by their offensive and their team play the past couple of weeks.
Well,
no adjustments at all.
No adjustments, and that is a little bit of indictment on Dabo and his staff over there. So we'll see how they get it adjusted. Obviously, Dabo's put enough equity in the bank over there where he didn't have to worry about anything. He could probably lose the rest of his games, and I mean he's going to be just fine over there at Clemson for what he's brought to that little town there in South Carolina. But we'll does it become a trend? Does this offense look like this later in this year and into next year? We'll see. Dr. Pepper may be wanting their money back from DJ Uiagalelei, though. We will say that. But, the guy that I cover all the time at UGA Sports, Kirby Smart, his saying this year is either you're elite or you're not. Guys, this next team that we're going to talk about in their headline, Florida, they're playing at an elite level when it comes to their rushing attack, averaging 323 yards rushing per game, 264 yards rushing in SEC play. Donovan, how just those are mind-boggling numbers and has to be an offensive lineman's dream when you've got a coach like Dan Mullen drawing stuff up in the dirt, but really basically just telling you guys go mash them up front and we're gonna run behind the holes you open up.
Yeah, it means a lot when you are not only the center of your team, but you're the center of, trust of your team, right? If they didn't trust you, they wouldn't be having these play calls that are allowing you to get over 200 yards rushing per game, right? And we saw them, ball out against Bama, even though they lost. And so the next question was, okay, was that a fluke or are they going to do that against, good front seven in Tennessee? And guess what? They did. 283 yards rushing by Florida's an offense total, right? They are legit, and that can carry them far in the SEC.
Josh, I know you're going to talk probably about a 2-quarterback system, and it's going to be something along the lines of Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson both. I've got a question is, Emory Jones has played his 2 best games when he hasn't had to look over his shoulder at Anthony Richardson. Do you think that factors into play, or you think Dan Mullen is just Anthony Richardson's too talented, he's going to play him regardless?
I think we'll see more of both when he's not busy doing backflips and stuff before the game, being injured. They're completely different in the aspect of Anthony's just a giant dude. Like they're comparing him to Tim Tebow with his jersey number and his size and everything already. Emory Jones is more of like that quicker, shifty guy. So I think we will see both. I don't know if Mullins feels like he has to play Emory Jones just because this is supposed to be like his year. Like he's waited. Now it's finally his turn. I don't know if that pressure's on him, but I think we'll see more of Anthony Richardson slowly getting put in there in certain situations too, like goal line. I'm absolutely putting Anthony in because just let him run it straight ahead. If you're on the 2-yard line, I'm not putting Emory Jones on the field.
Yeah, and also an intriguing matchup. It's not one of our games of the week that we're going to talk about, but Florida going to Kentucky, an 8-point favorite going into Lexington. That Kentucky defense, in my opinion, may be the second best defense in the entire SEC behind that of Georgia. They've got NFL talent everywhere on that field, guys who are going to be invited to the Senior Bowl. I think there's 8 or 9 seniors on that defense. It is Mark Stoops has to love what he's got going on there in Lexington.
But they turn the ball over so much on offense.
Yeah, if they can play cleaner, this Florida game, it could be intriguing here this weekend. But then we've got Oklahoma, Josh, who is just they're getting it done. I mean, they're undefeated. It's like it's I guess it is a factor. They're a victim of their own success, right? They've been so successful, so dominant in the Big 12. Now when they have any kind of hiccup or don't just absolutely obliterate teams, people are like, what's wrong with Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Oklahoma's like a 2008 Honda Civic. Like, it's not pretty, but it's getting the job done. Like, it's getting you from point A to point B. But Spencer Rattler, he's getting booed at home. Like, how embarrassing is that? You're supposed to be like the #1 overall draft pick going into the season. You signed this big NIL deal. you're like the guy. They're saying that you're better than Jalen Hurts, maybe better than Baker Mayfield, and then you're just getting booed at home. It's not a good look, but they just cannot run the ball, and I've never seen that from Oklahoma team in the last few years. So defenses are literally saying, throw the ball. Like, we want you to, because we know you can't run it. Like, we can easily stop your run with just our front four. So we want you to throw the ball. We're going to make sure that you can't.
Donovan, is that just a lack of Oklahoma being able to get movement up front? Too many people in the box, Spencer Rattler not, executing well enough on some of those RPOs that made guys like Murray and Mayfield and all these guys, that have been there and won Heisman's. What's the reason that Oklahoma is not able to run the football effectively?
Yeah, I think a big misconception when we look at, top elite programs like Oklahoma or like Clemson, right? When they struggle in the run game, it can't always be that their offensive line is just bad, right? They recruit too well for them to just be bad football players. They're not a mid-tier Power 5 program that just happens to be bad, that position. So they have the talent there and they have the coaching. It's been the same offensive line coach there for the past few years. So you look at other things that are going on. They don't have a ton of the playmakers that they have in the past, the big name guys. And again, when your quarterback's struggling, it doesn't help your offense at all. It doesn't help your O-line, because if the defense knows, hey, like you said, Josh, please throw the ball. Please throw the ball. They can throw different blitzes at you, right? They can confuse the scheme up front in the run game and the pass game. And so it's just a whole big mess over there in Sooner Nation.
Great point there in terms of, it's an entire team deal and the scheme. And sometimes, guys, you reach a point where you lose enough people from successful programs where there is a little bit of a dip. Everybody is human, those programs. So interesting points there. And now we're going to move on to one of our favorite segments of the show. We're talking about playoffs. But before we do that, not every game can be in the illustrious package that is our marquee matchups of the week that have playoff implications. But there are some games out there that we wanted to list on honorable mention. One of them is taking place tonight, Josh, with Iowa traveling to Maryland. Your hero, your guy, Tua Tagovailoa, his little brother, in action over there at Maryland as the Hawkeyes come to town.
Yeah, baby Tagovailoa. I'm really interested to see what Coach Loxley draws up. Obviously love Coach Loxley from his time at Alabama. Just a great coach. One of those guys you want to play for. But I want to see what he can draw up offensively to challenge that Iowa defense, who might be possibly challenging Georgia for one of the top defenses in the country. So I want to see what they can do to counter that. We know Iowa can score on Maryland's defense. It's been struggling. I mean, especially against the Illinois game. I was just surprised. Illinois was down to like their third and fourth string running back and just running the ball at will against Maryland. So they need to lock that up. But the best thing to do is, Coach Loxley, keep your offense on the field and just score as many points as you can. But it's not going to be easy against Iowa. I would say Iowa wins this one pretty easily.
Donovan, Iowa's got a really strong front, probably the best center in all of college football. When you look at him pulling and running 30 yards downfield and just destroying guys, Tyler Linderbaum just absolutely demolishing folks. I mean, just it's crazy what he's able to do athletically for that front that, not many coaches can go in there and say, all right, we're going to scheme up to pull our center and go block the corner over here. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot of times. So Donovan, talk about this Iowa front going into this game with Maryland.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the rest of their line to kind of feed off that talent, right? When you have a guy, especially in the middle at center, you're lucky to have, great center general, but an elite center. I mean, Josh, you mentioned you usually see the freak athletes at tackle. Watching him pin and pull like that is, I mean, it's like art to me, right? It's awesome. So I'm waiting for that O-line to kind of feed around him a little bit, feed off that energy and take the next step. And again, against the Maryland defense that struggles a little bit, this could be that game where Iowa's offense kind of just gets a little, extra jolt as Big Ten play really kicks up.
No doubt. So picks on that one real quick. Everybody.
Iowa. Easy.
Iowa.
Iowa.
Too much. Yeah.
Clean sweep. I think Iowa, the Fighting Tyler Linderbaums and Kirk Ferentz's go in there and take
big man ballerina. Yep.
Yeah, go take care of things at College Park. And our second honorable mention game, OU K-State. Don't have to talk about this one too much. We've kind of talked about Oklahoma's problems. It'll probably be a game where it looks like just absolute crap with both teams, just a slugfest of nobody being able to move the ball much. Spencer Rattler and company doing just enough. Everybody taking Oklahoma to stay stay undefeated in this matchup?
Yes, ugly, but I think Deuce Vaughn's going to run the ball pretty well against Oklahoma and make it interesting, kind of stress out Sooner Nation once again. Probably some more boos coming.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one. Nice and stressful for Sooner Nation, which I always love to see.
Yeah, I do think that Oklahoma will sweat it out there in Manhattan, Kansas, but they get it done and in typical Sooner fashion for this 2021 season. And finally, an absolute rock fight up there in Madison, Wisconsin. You have two teams that may rush the ball a combined 85, 90 times in this game. I mean, it's going to be run the football central. Game ought to go pretty quick between Michigan and Wisconsin.
Hour and a half.
I think Michigan hits more explosive runs in this game. Wisconsin can't stop turning the ball over. So I like Michigan. I put out a tweet saying I think Michigan right now is the best team in the Big Ten. I know Donovan doesn't like hearing that, but I'm going to take Michigan to beat Wisconsin.
I agree with you. I think Michigan wins this one. Aiden Hutchinson on the outside, bringing that rush. Graham Mertz is going to be running for his life all game. I want to see more of a passing game from Michigan. I mean, I've been, harsh on their offense the last few years. They've always had good guys like Donovan Peoples-Jones. They can't utilize their offense at all. They're like, oh, we got a lot of talent, but let's just not do anything with it. So I'm waiting for some kind of passing game from Michigan. It's been non-existent so far. You got to get the passing game going if you want to do anything in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm with you, Josh. We got to see more from their passing game. Otherwise, Michigan will remain as the fourth, and I said the fourth best Big Ten team, right?
It's pretty far down.
Listen, I know Wisconsin, the score, doesn't really reflect the game they had against Notre Dame. But again, Wisconsin's not a great football team. Some of our predictions with that were quite far off. But I'm going with Michigan to cover again. The 1.5 point basically pick 'em spread. I don't get too much with this game. I'm going Michigan.
Yeah, and betting wise, Chris Fallica, Love Bear, by the way, he tweeted out, going back to 2016, there have been 9 unranked teams of which have been favored versus a top 15 team, which is Michigan. 7 of the 9 have won that game, including West Virginia 2 weeks ago versus Virginia Tech. So a little bet nugget there if you're planning on throwing some money on that one.
Yeah, I just don't trust Wisconsin to not give the game away. So as they did against Notre Dame last week. So that brings us to our segment where we're going to talk about games that will directly impact the playoffs. It's time to talk about the playoffs.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
So in terms of a playoff atmosphere, a game that is going to have a lot of eyeballs on it, no more so than where College Game Day is headed, Athens, Georgia. I'll be there on the field for the entire game, on the field, getting to cover this one. It is Arkansas at Georgia. You have Georgia, an 18-point favorite in this one. Josh, does Vegas know something that the rest of us don't?
Vegas always knows something, but that's just so many points for such a defensive battle. Like I want it to be like a low scoring slugfest, but I don't like 18 points. I told you before we started recording, that's just too much for Arkansas, but their offense might be a little too stagnant. You only have really one wide receiver who might be the best wide receiver in the SEC. Run game is not going to really do much against Georgia. So like you have to pull out some bells and whistles against Georgia. And I just don't think Arkansas has that against that legendary defensive line in the making, and that was hard for me to say.
Donovan, I mean, this is a battle of the trenches, not only in terms of Georgia's defensive line, but you have Arkansas's defensive line with Big Ridgeway in the middle. They got Trey Williams, the Missouri transfer, who has just wreaked havoc on opposing offenses. But I got a question, how are we going to find out how good truly that Arkansas defense is? Because it's not like Texas A&M's offense is clicking on all cylinders right now, and Texas was in the middle of a quarterback change when they played them as well. So, Donovan, what do you think we'll find out about this Arkansas 3-man front, dropping 8 defense as they go against Georgia?
Yeah, listen, we found out a lot about their offensive line over the past week that they're legit, right? We're going to find out this week in their front 7 if they truly are legit, because, again, they haven't been tested against such a complete team like Georgia, right, at all this season, right? And, again, they played some good teams, but like you mentioned, a lot of changes, right, a lot of inconsistent play like from Texas A&M. We're going to see, Georgia's been consistent this whole year. I know they had the game against Clemson. They didn't score many points. Their offense was banged up. I mean, really banged up. They're getting some playmakers back now. We're going to see what this Arkansas defense is really about.
Yeah, you talk about dropping 8, but one thing I love about Arkansas's defense is when someone gets the ball, everyone is there ready to go, especially that linebacker core led by Bumper Poole, who's back. He was phenomenal last week against Texas A&M. It's just even when they run the ball, like as soon as the lane opens up, the linebackers are there. They communicate well. Everyone's on the same page. You can just tell that defense is just clicking. And then, of course, Jalen Catalone. You got to watch that passing game. He might pick off JT Daniels. You never know.
How many times did Gary Danielson say the phrase "race to the ball"? And he said that's Arkansas's thing. But Gary Danielson, in typical Gary Danielson form, made you hate that saying just by him saying it, 50 times there in a row. So no doubt they rallied to the ball 100%. Well coached with a Barry Odom, former Missouri head coach turned defensive coordinator now for Arkansas. He did a great job calling defenses when he was the coordinator at Missouri and also the head coach, now carrying that over with great SEC experience there for Sam Pittman. But guys, if you're watching on the 365 Sports YouTube channel, you can see that Georgia's only allowing 69.5 rushing yards per game. They almost had more points than Vanderbilt had total yards last week. And I know it's Vanderbilt, but guys, anytime you do that, that's just an unbelievably impressive stat. They're getting healthy. They have Brock Bowers, who at this point could arguably be the best tight end so far in the country with the two that Alabama have there. You've got Billingsley and Latu, and then also Brock Bowers are all just really doing their thing there in the SEC. But you've got Darnell Washington now coming back, which is the equivalent, Josh, of lining up LeBron James on the other side.
Dude, is so big.
He's 6'7", maybe 6'8", 260 pounds, can run like a deer, and he's finally healthy. They get Tyke Smith back on that defense to play the star position, give him a little depth in that secondary, which is much needed. I think that Vegas is seeing these guys returning. Kendall Milton didn't play last week against Vanderbilt when they scored 62 points, and Kendall Milton is a load to tackle. He's coming back from a shoulder. So they're getting 3 tremendous playmakers back. William Poole was academically ineligible for the first 4 games, so there's another safety coming back for that Georgia defense. I think that's what Vegas is seeing. I like Georgia to not cover the 18.
I was going to say.
Pretty close. I'm going to give them a victory. I'm going to say they win this one 28-13 in Athens. What are you guys' predictions?
I just don't. I fear for KJ Jefferson's life, to be honest with you. Like, I know he's going to want to run the ball. He's not going to be able to pass on Georgia. So, like,
and he's got a knee. He's got a knee.
Exactly. And that defensive line, like we talked about, there's just it's like people say that Alabama cranks out these guys in a lab. Georgia's doing the same thing with that D line. Like, what's the smallest guy? Like 6'4", 320, like on the line. It's ridiculous. So I fear for KJ's life. He's going to try to run the ball because he's going to want to, because that's what he has to do. And he's just going to get ate up all game long. I think it's going to be low scoring. I could see 27-10, 27-13-ish kind of game. I just don't see Arkansas being able to move the ball outside of Burks.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little higher scoring, just 30-17, right, Georgia. Only because I could see Georgia's defense forcing some mistakes out of Arkansas. Right? We know where they've been, right? But again, this moment is huge, and you're playing probably the most complete team in college football. They're, especially on the defense side, they could pressure you into making some big time mistakes, which could just add a few more points, add some good field position there. So 30-17 is my final.
There's some strip sacks coming.
Oh yeah.
Now moving on to that game's at 12 noon, so we didn't forget to mention the Georgia games at 12 o'clock. But now, guys, moving on to the 2:30 kickoff game. Is this the biggest group of 5 game ever in terms of impact when it comes to Cincinnati going to Notre Dame? And I say that because you look at the Bearcats, guys, and they have a legitimate shot to be highly favored in the rest of their games. They take care of business here in South Bend. You have 2 undefeated teams coming into this one. Josh, what's your take on Desmond Ridder and the crew coming in to take on Brian Kelly's Fighting Irish?
You kind of hope Cincinnati does win just because I don't see Notre Dame getting through their gauntlet of a schedule undefeated. So, like, if you want a group of 5 to get to the playoffs, you're hoping Cincinnati because they can put this win on their resume. But betting-wise, I've been so back and forth on this game. I see a lot of similarities. I see both teams have just a defensive stud. But for some reason, Notre Dame loves playing to their opponents, whether it's good or bad. Like, you see them struggle against Florida State, and then they just start blowing out Wisconsin at the end of the game. I will say, though, the one stat that really stuck out to me is Jack Cohn has been sacked an FBS high 19 times so far this season. So, Donovan, I have to ask you, what is going on with that top-notch offensive line for Notre Dame?
You know, you have so much kind of cycling out of talent, right, with Notre Dame, and you do have coaching changes every now and then in Notre Dame. And again, your quarterback, Jack Cohn isn't, he's not anything special, right? He's not a horrible quarterback, but he's not anything special, right? He's not that good. When you have all those pieces in line, right? And again, we know what the Notre Dame offensive line is supposed to be, right? And they're just not that this year. And whether it's a scheme or a talent level, again, it's kind of a similar thing. They have the talent. It's the same guys that have been there the past 3-4 years. It's just you look kind of more in a broader perspective. And again, going up against Cincinnati defensive line, I know they only have about 4 or 5 sacks on the year. Cincinnati defensive line, I think, could be in for a big day against the Notre Dame offensive line. They gave up 6 sacks to Toledo.
No doubt. Notre Dame is only averaging 2.3 yards per carry, guys. They're only averaging 80 yards rushing per game. That is not a recipe for success when you do not have dynamic quarterback play. Jack Cohn is serviceable, not a guy that can put the team on his back and go, win a game. Desmond Ridder, he's got his own questions. We'll see what happens with him. Ultimately, I think that the team, and this is a weird thing to say when you're talking about Cincinnati versus Notre Dame, I think that the team speed, the way that Cincinnati plays faster, not just, in a foot race, but they play faster. They handle their assignments faster than Notre Dame does. I'm going to take Cincinnati to cover that 1.5 points, and I'm going to pick them to win this game. Let's say I'm going to take them to win this one 24-17 over Notre Dame.
That's exactly what I had. Like you said in the graphic there, get my Alabama transfer Jerome Ford going on that run game. Keep the ball in Ritter's hands as much as possible. But what I love about this game, 2 of my favorite guys in the draft, you have these 2 defensive studs with Sauce Gardner and Kyle Hamilton, who I've been raving on since the beginning of the season. And people are finally getting to see what he's got. Who's going to step up when their team needs it on defense? Who's going to get those turnovers? I mean, so far, Cincinnati's defense has caused 9 turnovers total, while Notre Dame has 9 interceptions alone, led by Kyle Hamilton's 3, which is absurd, by the way. And then they have 2 fumble recoveries on defense. So I want to see who helps out their offense and give them a short field, because I would much rather have the ball at the 20 with not being able to run the ball as much if you're Notre Dame. So short field is going to win the game. Who wins the turnover battle? And I say Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think Desmond Ridder is going to take a big step in this game and kind of show himself. Yes, exactly. Show himself as like, listen, I'm ready to play. Like I'm ready to play in the NFL, but I'm ready to play this season, right? Again, I don't think they're going to blow out Notre Dame. I'm going to go Cincinnati 27-20, right? But I think it's going to be pretty convincing the entire way. Not so much Indiana where you're like, oh my gosh, Cincinnati's about to blow it against Indiana. I think it's going to be pretty clear from the beginning that Cincinnati has a stronghold on the game.
Yeah, so we all like the Bearcats to take out Notre Dame at home, and that was, like I said, the 2:30 game. So we're going in chronological order here. We had Arkansas and Georgia kicking off at 12. You can then flip over the channels if you're at home, watch a little Cincinnati and Notre Dame. Hey, guys, is that on NBC or the Peacock Network? How do they even do those games now?
Notre Dame's got NBC as on like a lifetime contract, so it's got to be on NBC.
Oh, I know, but they've got that thing with the Peacock Network now, so I don't know if they're doing it on an app or all that kind of stuff either. But so Cincinnati, Notre Dame at 2:30, and then Josh, I know at 3:30 you'll be glued to the television to watch your Alabama Crimson Tide take on the Ole Miss Rebels. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see on the top bullet point for us on Ole Miss. Lane ain't scared. I'm telling you, Lane Kiffin has the most unique attitude going into this matchup of any former Saban assistant out there. He just knows, he seems to know what frustrates Nick more than anybody else in terms of just annoying him personally. And I think Lane takes great pleasure in that. Alabama, a 14-point, so a 2-touchdown favorite for this game. Guys, Ole Miss racked up 647 yards in this contest last year. Josh, we'll defer to you on this one. The Alabama faithful over there. What are your thoughts on the Lane train pulling into Tuscaloosa?
First off, I love Lane Kiffin. Like when he was at Alabama, so many people hated the hire, but I love Lane Kiffin. I got a little video giving him a fist bump against Tennessee when he was wearing his orange tie when they beat them down. But Lane knows what to do, and that's the scary thing. I need to see what Saban does to counter this. Like you said, last year, just yacked up yards against us. And you know they're going to do it again. So, like, my biggest thing is discipline on the defensive line. I'm sick and tired of seeing Deshaun Watson, all these mobile quarterbacks run past us and just make our defense look terrible. And Lane Kiffin's going to do the same thing. Like you said, there's a trio of running backs, and then you have Matt Corral who's going to tuck it and go too. So they're going to make short yard plays turn into big yard plays. They're not going to like just throw it deep all the time. They're going to stretch the field. They're going to make sure the linebacker comes up and then just dunk it behind them and take off for 20 yards. So my biggest thing is the defensive line has to play discipline. I need the front four guys. DJ Dale, you got to step up. Darius Mathis, I need you to clog up some lanes. Make sure they can't run the ball. But Will Anderson, a beast. Love the guy. But don't be too aggressive and run past the action. Sometimes it's good to wait, be patient, let it come to you, or just go to the play, but don't overcommit to things to where they're running past you. So this does make me nervous because it's the games that we always lose. It's to that fast-paced offense, like Auburn back in the day before they started sucking with Bo Nix. They know what to do, and I'm a little worried, but 14 points is too much. There's no way we're winning by 14.
Well, also, and before I get to Donovan on this, it's not just that defensive line. Henry To'oTo'o has not been impressive. He is ranked by PFF as having, guys, he is 465th against the run, a grade of 38.5. That's out of 100, folks.
It's like
not very good. Christian Harris ranked 241 for that linebacker core. I mean, it's a linebacking core that struggles, right, against the run. I watched the touchdown run that I believe it was Dameon Pierce for Florida had right up the gut, a zone play. You had a linebacker going in man coverage with a blocker running out in the flat and another one running underneath as a puller, and there was no one in the middle of that defense. So, Donovan, one thing I wanted to ask you, I know there are different types of quarterbacks, but do you think with Lane Kiffin being the wise offensive genius that he is, do you think he will employ some of the option with Matt Corral, some speed option, some counter option, that kind of stuff that Florida did, because Matt Corral is just as lethal with his legs, if not more so, than Emory Jones?
I think you have to, right? Again, you have to pull out every string that you have to beat Alabama, right? And again, you have the personnel, especially at quarterback, to do that this year. We know what you can do, in the air, but why don't you? Your offensive line's playing confident, right? They're playing with the speed of this offense, which I'll give them credit. It's hard to do as a big boy up there. They're playing with that speed. They're playing well. They're playing cover. The whole offense is. And Nick Saban's going to know that you're probably going to pull that out. So it's up to Lane Kiffin to kind of deploy that in the most creative Lane Kiffin way possible. The one thing I'll say with Alabama that worries me, and Josh, you tell me if you agree, I think Bryce Young, obviously he's in the Heisman finalist list. Ole Miss's defense, nothing scary good about them, but they play scary. I don't know if you see what I see, but they play angry.
Much better than last year. Yeah.
When you get some juice to them, they feed off of that between each other. Right? I know they had 4 or 5 targeting calls against Louisville.
Yeah, it was bad.
I get it. But the way you saw them hit and attack, I mean, they are a violent defense. That's what I'm a little worried about. I know it's at home and with Alabama. I'm a little worried about Bryce Young taking a shot from one of those guys and not even necessarily getting hurt, but just getting rattled a little bit and be like, oh, okay, these are big boys. These are guys from the SEC.
And
Well,
for me,
I'll come to Josh's defense real quick, Josh.
please
It is Alabama. I mean, we're still talking about Alabama, and we're still talking about a team that has plenty of weapons, and also just in a little bit different way. It's not 4 wide receivers, right, that are going to kill you. Now they've got a tight end combo in Jaleel Billingsley and Cameron Latou that have combined for 6 touchdowns on the year. Those are just 2 deadly targets, especially in the red zone, that teams are going to have, trouble stopping. John Mechie has turned into a possession receiver in this offense. I mean, he's got 24, 25 catches on the year, averaging 10 yards a catch. And then Jamison Williams, that is a special teams nightmare. He's a deep threat. A guy well from Ohio State, Donovan, that transferred down to Tuscaloosa. So let's not put it out of context. We're not saying Alabama's some kind of underdog coming into this. It's just the gap has closed in a confidence standpoint, and also an execution, and even a little bit of a talent standpoint. Alabama's still way more of a talented team, top to bottom, than Ole Miss. But there's pieces there that are, when you got a guy, quarterback is the straw that stirs the drink, right? And Matt Corral is playing better than Bryce Young. Bryce Young, still right there neck and neck as a favorite for the Heisman Trophy. So if that tells you Alabama's a victim of their own success, guys, they have a little bit of a dip in performance, well, something must be wrong. No, they're just not superhumans, right? They are still human beings. So go ahead, Josh. Go ahead and make your final case and pick on this one.
Well, I want to say the one thing people aren't talking about, Brian Robinson, senior running back, had a rib injury. I don't think he's 100%. You have to get the run game going. Like, I want old-fashioned Alabama, people tweeting out, run the ball, Nick. Like, come on, Brian Dable, run the ball like a few years back. Like, that's what we did with Eddie Lacy, TJ Yeldon, so on. Mark Ingram, you have to establish the run. Yeah. I mean, if we had him this year, he'd be taking it to the house every single time he touched the ball. But you have to get the ball going. Jace McClellan, Trey Sanders, they got to step up. If Brian Robinson's not 100%, which I don't think he is going to be, they're kind of saying like 85-ish range. Step up, run the ball, gash that defense, long possessions to keep that offense off the field. I want to say 41-35.
Alabama?
Oh, yeah. Roll. Roll Tide, baby.
Donovan?
I'm going to go Alabama 41-38. I think it's going to be a pretty close game that either comes down. I know. I think it's going to be a close game that comes down to Matt Corral either making a mistake on that kind of last drive, or Bama's just consistent run game, just ending the game right in those last couple of minutes.
Malachi Moore, pick 6. I'm calling it.
I'm gonna be pretty bold in my prediction as well. I think Mississippi State jumps out ahead early on this one. I think that they come out with Lane Kiffin. Mike Wilbon already, pissed Lane off earlier this week. He's already had the it just gave him more fuel to the fire here to say, oh, I'm an embarrassment, am I? He's going to show you an embarrassment. He's going to go out and embarrass that defense again for 647 yards last year, guys. I know that Nick Saban has been circling this game, and he's going to get, but guys, if there's deep rooted problems with your defense, you can't just get Henry To'oTo'o and that linebacking core to fit right immediately. And you can't make Henry To'oTo'o faster. He's going to at some point have to cover Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor, Henry Parrish out of the backfield, right? In some of these matchups in the way that Nick Saban's defense likes to play. I'm going to say Ole Miss jumps out early. Alabama comes back, takes the lead, and Ole Miss ends up winning this thing at the end. I'm going to go Ole Miss 45-41 over. Take the over. It's 79 points. Take the over in this one because there's going to be more than 79 points scored in this game. So we've got
always score first for some reason. They always love scoring like fast and early on us. Then I'm like, oh, God, here we go.
So we've got 2 for Alabama. I'm taking Ole Miss, and that is our 3:30 game. And now we're going to move on to Big 12 country, where Baylor and Oklahoma State are both undefeated, guys, and Oklahoma State a 3.5-point favorite, Josh, in this one.
Yeah, honestly, Baylor opened up the doors on the Iowa State hype train last week and threw me off of it, just because that's the team I was riding with, and they came out of nowhere with the upset last week. And Abram Smith is absolutely a dude, ran the ball really well. They haven't played anyone other than Iowa State, so I want to see how they compete against this Oklahoma State team at Oklahoma State. I'm not mad at Oklahoma State being favorites because they go to Boise State and win and hold them to only 20 points. And then last week beats Kansas State and holds them to only 20 points too. But last week, Baylor's special teams came up big. Listen to this sequence. So they deflected a punt that only went 20 yards early in the game. Then they kicked a 56-yard field goal from it, like they have Justin Tucker back there or something. 56 yards in college is impressive. That's really hard to do. Then Treston Ebner, second string running back who does their punt returns and kick returns, had a 98-yard kickoff return for a touchdown in the third quarter. And then he capped that off with a 41-yard punt return in the fourth to put him in position to kick a field goal to go up 31-23, which really ended up being the difference maker to win that game. So special teams wins games, and Baylor has it. They play on fire. I don't know what it is about this team, but on defense, they are quick to the ball. And like I said, just shut down that Iowa State team last week.
I'm excited to see what uniforms they come out with. Those all yellows last week were sweet, man.
Those were so clean.
Those are some nice uniforms over there. Donovan, if you have, like Josh said, successful special teams and you're able to run the football, as I'm showing everybody on the 365 Sports YouTube channel on this graphic, running to win. Baylor has been averaging 272 rushing yards per game. That's right up there with Florida's, territory, what they've been doing in SEC play. And, Abram Smith, 413 rushing yards. Treston Ebner, 348 rushing yards. And the quarterback, Gary Bohannon, 105 rushing yards. When you're able to run with that kind of success, I mean, what is Oklahoma State going to have to do to be able to put Baylor in positions they don't want to be in this game?
Yeah, they're going to have to match it. I mean, their offensive line is going to take a big step forward. They have a good offensive line anchored by one of my former teammates, Danny Godlewski, right? They've got a good, strong, tough offensive line. But again, they're only averaging 25 points a game, right? And again, you go up against a pretty complete team in Baylor right now. And again, with the quarterback, Bohannon throwing 73% completion rate, just a very efficient operation. They have going at 42 points a game. You have to match them because neither defense is that outstanding, right? Again, we saw Iowa State struggles on offense, and yet they still put up almost 30 points against Baylor, right? It's not going to be a stout defensive matchup.
Reese Hall was running on Baylor. Yeah. Man. I mean, he broke off several runs, so you know that Oklahoma State's going to be able to do so. But so your opinion is that the best solution for Oklahoma State is just to keep that Baylor offense off the field, sustain drives, and chew up a little bit of clock over there.
You have to, and you got to have consistent quarterback play, right, for Spencer Sanders, because he's kind of been hot and cold, right? If you get consistent play, he doesn't need to be otherworldly, right? But the offensive line needs to keep playing as consistent they have been. He's got to step it up, right? You keep Baylor off the field and your defense just plays solid, right, like it has been. You've got a real shot to cover that 3.5 point spread.
Yeah, big thing. Bohannon, no turnovers this season. And like we talked about, Spencer Sanders, I really want to see how he looked post Tylan Wallace and post Hubbard losing them to the NFL last year. He hasn't been too bad, but last year he was just inconsistent at the worst time possible. And this sets up the perfect stage for him to once again just turn the ball over and put the ball in Baylor's hands to really control this game.
And the winner of this one, guys, is in great shape. I mean, just really be in the driver's seat when it comes to, them and Oklahoma, really when it comes to the Big 12 here. Oklahoma State 4-2 versus Baylor at home in Stillwater since 2010, guys. And to your point, Donovan, when it comes to Oklahoma State, they're only rushing for 144 rushing yards a game. That's a 3.4 yards per carry. And Jalen Warren is doing the lion's share of the heavy lifting. I mean, he's got 387 rushing yards. The next best on the team is Spencer Sanders, the quarterback, with 120. So definitely they need to be able to establish the run and get some more clock. So go ahead and let's go ahead and finish it off. What do we got the scores being in this matchup?
I'm picking against Oklahoma State just because I bet Boise State at a huge parlay I had earlier in the season, and they kind of ruined that for me. So I'm a little bitter against Oklahoma State. But I think this Baylor team plays hungry. There's just something special about them, off to this great start for a reason. I'm going to say 28-23 Baylor.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you as well, Josh. I'm going to go Baylor 30-24. I think Spencer Sanders makes a few key mistakes and costs him this game.
I don't like the offensive play, like you said, Donovan, out of Oklahoma State. I don't trust them to not turn the ball over either. They've got turnovers. It seems like that have cost them in every game, even though they are undefeated at this point. I'm going to take Baylor to capitalize on those turnovers and also just to really run the ball effectively and have some explosive runs. I'm going to take Baylor big in this one. I'm going to take them 38-21 over Oklahoma State. Take the Bears to sick them in this one. So we've talked about all of these games have playoff implications, guys. Now, when you talk about playoffs and you talk about winning at the highest level, with that typically comes the individual awards, and there is no higher award out there than the Heisman Trophy.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
So each year, the best player in college football gets the Heisman Trophy. And Joshua, what's our update right now with how the Heisman race is looking?
So top three, I hate to say it, Matt Corral's number one. He's Vegas's favorite right now. And then close behind him is Bryce Young. Sets up for a good little Heisman matchup. Got to figure whoever wins this turns out to be the next favorite. And then Desmond Ridder, number three. This is your chance. If you play well against Notre Dame, you protect your spot. Maybe Matt Corral can kind of fall off once we knock them out this game. But an interesting nugget that Donovan brought up was even if Ole Miss loses, but say Matt Corral puts up big numbers, shows that he's that baller, does he still have a chance to win the Heisman? So that's my question for Donovan.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, right? If he goes out there and he drops 5-6 touchdowns again, right, and he puts up 300 yards, right, maybe a score rushing, right, he's still balling out, and the team loses by, it's not a blowout, they lose by, 10 points or less. I don't see why he wouldn't remain the favorite unless Bryce Young just comes out and rips off, monster game, which he could. He absolutely could.
Can't forget Trayvon Henderson as well, the running back for Ohio State. They're going to lean on him heavily throughout the rest of this year. CJ Verdell, who put on that tremendous performance against Ohio State, running back for Oregon. And then down here in the South, guys, there's a little bit of love for a certain defensive tackle. It's just going to be a campaign in name only. He doesn't have a real shot at winning the trophy, but they're really rooting for Jordan Davis down here. And guys, it's hard to argue if you're talking about best player overall in college football. This man is 6'6", 340 pounds, and he hit 20.2 miles per hour chasing down the UAB quarterback the other day. That is an impressive human being. It's basically like a refrigerator with a rocket booster attached behind it, just going across the field to hit somebody. So Jordan Davis, he'll at least get some talk. I wouldn't be surprised if some people vote him up into that top 10 race of the Heisman before it's all said and done, as long as he remains healthy. So that's our Heisman talk. And now we're going to help you out with some of the best bets of the week, hit some key matchups for the week, and also the storylines that could be there when we hit our reaction show on Monday. It's time for the Big Three.
Big Three. Yeah. Big Three.
Josh, you're our resident betting expert here. What are the best bets that you like this week? Even though I think on Twitter the last 2 weeks you've sworn off betting three or four times. So,
I quit until today.
You go back into it. So, what are the best bets? The top three bets in the Big Three?
Yeah, we gave y'all a free one with over Ole Miss, Alabama. But some of the other little under the radar ones here that we picked out: UCLA, Arizona State over 55.5. That's just like a West Coast showdown. I think Jaden Daniels is going to light up the UCLA defense. And then Chardonnay, the fine wine running back out of UCLA, I think he's going to run the ball against that Arizona State defense. So I feel pretty good about that one. I think that's probably the one I feel the best about. Kansas State, 10.5 versus Oklahoma. We talked about how Oklahoma is just starting out sluggish. It seems like they're just not as interested in it. Like what's his name? Spencer Rattler. Sorry. Kansas State, 10.5 point favorites over Oklahoma. It's going to be one of those slow, grinding, boring Oklahoma games where they're getting booed once again. Deuce Vaughn's probably going to have 50 rushes and score 2 touchdowns because that's all Kansas State really has. So I think they keep it close because of ball control. I see 10.5. I think we're right in that like 7-ish range. So I feel really good about that one. Spencer Rattler not playing well. Kansas State has held a couple opponents to some low points. So I feel good about that. This is an interesting one. Boston College 15-point underdogs versus Clemson.
How are they a 15-point underdog? Jump all over that, folks. I don't even like bet on the reg, but I'm just telling you, like, if I may go in and submit one on this one. They scored 41 points against Missouri last week, which is Missouri's a kind of mid-tier SEC team that I guarantee if they played Clemson right now, they would give them a decent ball game. So Boston College plus 15. I think that's a great one there.
I think Vegas is looking at my guy Phil Dracovic, the quarterback out of Boston College, out for the season. Broke my heart. Really didn't want to watch much
41
football.
last week.
Exactly. Like Zay Flowers is still part of that offense. I think they're going to give Clemson fits, and then their defense has just been stout the last few years. So Clemson kind of slumped back from that NC State game. They're playing at home once again. I like that. It's just a lot of points. You have to look at points wise. If it's like 13.5, you're like, maybe. But that little bit of a difference being 15 might be the difference maker there. It's still just a ton of points.
So that's our first of the 3 categories, our top 3 bets. Donovan, our top 3 matchups of the week.
First one, we got Mississippi State front 7 versus Texas A&M's run game. Again, Texas A&M still a little banged up, right? They only put up 10 points against Arkansas. I like this matchup against a good Mississippi State front or defensive front. Second one is Cincinnati defense versus the Notre Dame offense, more specifically the Cincinnati defensive line versus Notre Dame offensive line. I think the Cincinnati D-line is poised for a monster game. They have the potential for this against a struggling Notre Dame running game, which you mentioned only a little over 2 yards a carry and rushing. And again, giving up sacks left and right. It's not looking great for him. And last one, quarterback Matt Corral versus Alabama's back 7. I think he's going to light the show up. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if he lights it up and Ole Miss gets one. I don't think it'll happen, but I think it's a great matchup.
What are the chances? I wish there was odds on, if Matt Corral gives a D's nuts joke to Jordan Battle if he scores a touchdown running by him after the mess up that Jordan Battle had in the press conference. How bad, Josh, do you think that Saban got on Jordan Battle?
Oh, absolutely. He probably had to stay in the ice bath for an extra hour after that.
Oh, no doubt. And then our top 3 storylines, our third category of 3 here in the Big 3 storylines of Week 5. These are projected out. What could be in the newspapers and online after this weekend matchup? Cincinnati jumps into the top 5 after taking care of Notre Dame. We all picked Cincinnati to take care of them, and we think that will happen. And obviously, if they do, just the way that AP voters knee-jerk react, a lot of the time that Cincinnati's going to jump up, even though I don't think Notre Dame's that good of a football team. CJ Stroud rebounds after a rocky beginning to his career. Who cares at this point right now?
You're going to see why Michigan's not the best team in the Big Ten when Ohio State drops a 20
just waiting for the mullet to come in.
Yeah.
Like Quinn Ewers or bust. That's where I'm at right now. It's a lost hope for Ohio State anyways right now. If they get in the playoffs, there's people are going to revolt if Ohio State gets in the playoffs. But then there will be a push for a 12 team. But Alabama shows the media that they are still for real despite heavy picks for Ole Miss upset. Y'all too think that. I think that
I put that in the notes.
I know Josh put that in the wrong.
I'm sick of it.
I think that Ole Miss takes care of business. But guys, it's always fun talking about college football. This is a packed weekend. Please make sure, guys, that you hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, 365 Sports YouTube channel. You can find CFB Unfiltered on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any podcast platform that you find using CFB Unfiltered. For Josh Taylor and Donovan White, I'm Blayne Gilmer. And remember, we'll be back with you on Monday for a Reaction Monday episode here on CFB. Lots of hot takes coming your way. Shows presented by BetOnline. And we will see you after a tremendous weekend of college football.